There are some silences in music that hit harder than sound itself. And this week, the world of rock fell quiet in a way it hasn't in decades. Ace Frehley, the original lead guitarist of Kiss, the man who made guitars smoke and galaxies seem small, has played his final note. At 74, surrounded by family in Morristown, New Jersey, the Spaceman took his last bow. For millions, Ace wasn't just another rock musician. He was the wild card, the electric pulse of a band that turned concerts into explosions of light, fire, and imagination. Behind that silver makeup and sly grin was a man who didn't just play the guitar, he turned it into a living, breathing part of the show. When smoke poured from the frets or sparks flew from the headstock, fans didn't just cheer, they believed in something bigger than music. But the story of Ace Frehley isn't just a tale of fame and pyrotechnics. It's a story of rebellion, genius, and the price of living life at full volume. From a Bronx kid with a second-hand guitar to one of rock's most iconic figures, Ace's journey was anything but simple. He lit up stages, defied expectations, and fought through more storms than the public ever knew. And now, as fans around the world light candles, share memories, and play those legendary riffs once more, one truth stands out. Ace Frehley didn't just join Kiss, he defined what it meant to be larger than life. But to understand the man behind the makeup, we have to go back to where it all began, long before the fame, the chaos, and the roaring crowds, to a boy in the Bronx who dreamed in sound. Because before he became the Spaceman, he was just Ace, a kid chasing a frequency that only he could hear. Long before the flashing lights and roaring crowds, there was a quiet, curious boy growing up in the Bronx, Paul Daniel Frehley. The streets around him were loud, full of car horns, sirens, and the kind of restless energy that could swallow a dreamer whole. But Ace wasn't listening to the noise of the city. He was listening for rhythm. Every echo in an alley, every beat from a passing radio seemed to call out to him. Born on April 27, 1951, into a working-class family with deep musical roots, Ace was surrounded by sound from the start. His mother sang, his siblings played instruments, and the family's small apartment was often filled with laughter, noise, and melody. It wasn't a glamorous life, but it was one that shaped his sense of wonder, that electric belief that music could be an escape. At 13, he got his first guitar. It wasn't shiny or new, just a battered six-string that had seen better days. But to Ace, it was magic. He would spend hours alone, experimenting with chords, trying to mimic the rock and roll giants he admired, Jimi Hendrix, the Rolling Stones, The Who. He wasn't reading sheet music. He was chasing feeling. Each note was a burst of rebellion, a spark of identity. High school wasn't easy for him. He was a kid with long hair, a leather jacket, and a spark in his eyes that teachers couldn't quite understand. But music became his lifeline. He joined local bands, played at basement parties, and earned a reputation for being unpredictable, raw talent wrapped in a mix of confidence and chaos. And then came the name that would stick with him forever. His friends started calling him Ace, short for Acey, a nickname born from his effortless charm and the way he always seemed to ace his performances. It fit perfectly. Even before fame, Ace Frehley had that spark, a blend of humor, danger, and charisma that made people remember him. By the time he hit his late teens, Ace was already chasing gigs around New York City. The music scene was fierce, sweaty clubs, blinding lights, and dreams that burned fast. He lugged his guitar through snow, through crowds, through rejection. But somewhere in that chaos, his style began to take shape. Wild, unrestrained, otherworldly. He wasn't trying to be polished. He wanted to be alive. His solos didn't sound like anyone else's. Because Ace wasn't following rules. He was creating his own. And though he didn't know it yet, those same instincts, the raw power, the strange humor, the cosmic imagination, would soon take him from nameless New York bars to arenas packed with screaming fans. because fate was about to hand Ace Frehley his biggest stage, and his wildest dream was just about to land among the stars. But dreams that rise fast often burn even faster, and Ace's journey to becoming the Spaceman was about to begin. In the early 1970s, New York City was alive with noise, not the kindly kind, but the raw kind. Loud guitars, louder dreams, and musicians who lived like every night could be their last. In the middle of that chaos, Ace walked into a tiny audition that would change music forever. He answered a newspaper ad from two ambitious musicians, Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons, who were looking for a guitarist with flash and style. Ace showed up late, wearing mismatched shoes, and carried himself with the kind of swagger that couldn't be faked. The moment he plugged in his guitar, the room lit up. His riffs were unpredictable, his energy magnetic. Paul and Gene didn't need to hear more. They had found their missing piece. Kiss was born, a band with one mission: to blow people's minds. They didn't want to sound like anyone else. They wanted to look like no one ever had. Black and white makeup, leather armor, platform boots. They weren't just musicians anymore. They were characters from another world. Ace became the Spaceman, a cosmic wanderer who shredded through the stars. His guitar wasn't just an instrument. It was an extension of his soul, one that could shoot smoke, light up, and even launch rockets. On stage, he looked untouchable. Offstage, he was quiet, almost shy, but his humor and unpredictability made him the band's spark. By 1974, Kiss had become more than a band. It was an identity. Fans painted their faces, raised their fists, and followed them like a movement. Ace had gone from a kid in the Bronx to a galactic icon, and he played every note like it might be his last. But behind the painted smiles and the roar of the crowd, pressure was building. Because when you climb that fast, the fall is always waiting. By the mid-1970s, Kiss wasn't just successful. They were a phenomenon. Every concert was an explosion of fire, blood, and adrenaline. Their songs, Rock and Roll All Night, Detroit Rock City, I Was Made for Lovin' You, became anthems for a generation. Their faces were everywhere: lunchboxes, posters, comic books, and even pinball machines.
Ace was the wild heart of it all. His solos sent shockwaves through stadiums. He'd make his guitar smoke, scream, and sparkle. Every performance a little dangerous, a little unpredictable, and completely unforgettable. Fans didn't just hear Kiss, they experienced them. But that kind of fame comes with a cost. Behind the scenes, the money, the pressure, and the constant touring started to take their toll. Ace, who once found joy in music, began to drown in the chaos of fame. Late nights blurred into mornings, and the line between the man and the mask started to fade. While Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley focused on business, turning Kiss into an empire, Ace just wanted to play. The endless meetings, the branding deals, the creative compromises, they weren't him. He was an artist, not a salesman. And that tension was slowly tearing the band apart. Still, on stage, he was unstoppable. The louder the music, the more alive he felt. But the silence after the show, that was where the cracks began to show. Success had made them legends, but it also made them strangers. The brotherhood that once united Kiss was now built on tension. Ace felt trapped in a band he helped create. He wanted freedom to write his own music, explore new sounds, and prove he could stand on his own. He began experimenting with sound, with life, with everything fame had to offer. Nights got longer, decisions got riskier, and slowly the Spaceman started to drift away. By 1982, it all came to a breaking point. Ace left Kiss. The band continued without him, shedding the makeup and trying to reinvent themselves. But something was missing. The spark was gone. Fans could feel it. The Spaceman had left orbit. For Ace, life outside Kiss was a battle. The spotlight dimmed and the road grew rough. He launched his solo project, Frehley's Comet, proving he still had fire left. But the industry had changed, and the shadows of his past were hard to escape. Still, No matter how far he fell, his influence never disappeared. Every young guitarist who grew up idolizing Kiss carried a little piece of Ace's rebellion in their playing. And destiny, it seemed, wasn't done with him yet. In the mid-1990s, nostalgia came calling. The world wanted Kiss back, the original Kiss, the makeup, the fire, the legends. When the band reunited for a massive world tour, it was as if time had folded back on itself. Ace and Peter Criss returned alongside Gene and Paul, and the world couldn't get enough. Stadiums sold out, fans dressed up like their heroes, and once again, the Spaceman ruled the stars. For Ace, it was redemption. He had walked through darkness and come out the other side. The fans' roar reminded him that his music had never truly left them. Night after night, as he stood under blinding lights, he played with the same wild energy he had back in the 70s. But the old tensions never completely disappeared. The same creative differences, the same personalities that clashed decades earlier, began to resurface. And though the reunion was triumphant, it wasn't permanent. By 2002, Ace left Kiss once again, this time for good. But unlike before, he walked away with peace. He had reclaimed his legacy, and his name would forever be carved into rock history. Even after leaving Kiss, Ace remained a lightning rod for headlines. There were feuds, interviews, and sharp words exchanged, especially with Gene Simmons, who famously said Ace no longer deserved to wear the makeup. But fans never turned their backs on him. They knew who the real Spaceman was. Ace continued touring, releasing solo albums, and sharing his story with humor and honesty. He spoke openly about his mistakes, his struggles, and his gratitude for the fans who kept believing in him. When Kiss was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2014, tensions surfaced again. The original four were honored, but they didn't perform together. A reminder that even legends carry old wounds. Still, time has a way of softening the edges. In his later years, Ace appeared occasionally with Kiss for special events and tributes. The fire might have dimmed, but the respect, even through the cracks, never fully died. He had lived the dream, lost it, and found it again. And that's something very few rock stars can say. On October 25, 2025, the world learned that Ace Frehley, the spaceman, the rebel, the dreamer, had passed away at 74. The cause was peaceful, his family said, surrounded by loved ones after a recent fall. In an instant, tributes poured in from across the globe. Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley released a joint statement calling him irreplaceable. Bret Michaels, frontman of Poison, called him a brother in rock. Metallica's Lars Ulrich posted that Ace's guitar solos had inspired him to pick up his first drumsticks. Even decades after his fame had peaked, the impact of his presence was everywhere. In the stage makeup of modern bands, in the thunderous riffs of new metal, and in the way young musicians dreamed of something bigger than themselves. The Spaceman's journey had come to an end, but the universe he helped build still glittered with his energy. Ace Frehley's story is more than a rock biography. It's a lesson in what it means to burn bright and live authentically. He wasn't perfect, he wasn't polished, but that's what made him unforgettable. He gave the world not just guitar solos, but spectacle. He made fans believe that music could be magic, that showmanship could be an art form, and that every misfit had a place among the stars. From the smoky clubs of New York to sold-out arenas, from the fallouts to the reunions, Ace remained true to himself, unpredictable, raw, and real. And though the Spaceman has taken his final flight, his echoes still travel. In every guitar that howls, in every kid who paints their face and dreams of being larger than life. Because legends don't die when the music stops. They live on in the noise they leave behind. And for Ace Frehley, that noise will never fade.